everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. We are in the new year. It has been several weeks. We're probably all rusty. Some of us may not even remember what Shop Talk is, but I have show notes in front of me, so I can pretend that I remember what Shop Talk is. So in case you are new here, welcome to Shop Talk. This is basically every other Monday, except when we don't do it. We kick back. It's after work, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to talk a little bit about some SQL Server related things, some data platform related topics, maybe a little bit of newsy related stuff. This time around, got a couple of items that are somewhat newsy, but not product announcements or anything fun like that. But before we get into any of that, welcome. And also, let me welcome the two fine feathered friends who are here tonight with me. I have got in the red corner the one and only Mala. How you doing, Mala?
Doing well. Good evening, everyone.
And in the blue corner, wearing the red trunks, which makes things really weird. Just you gotta pick one color, Mike. But we have Mike Christensen.
Hello. I will say, I know I joined a little bit late. Mala, I'm still looking forward to May, Massachusetts.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
It's a big month for me. Yeah.
Yep. So
we'll talk offline. I joined late when they were doing prep, but I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Is it okay to announce that, Mala?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
So Mala is graduating with a master's degree from UMass Amherst. That's coming up in May. It's part of the reason why Raleigh Day of Data is the day that it is, because we didn't want to step all over Mala's graduation day. So
thank you. That is very sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I am not officially, I'm from New Hampshire, not Massachusetts, but a lot of my family is from Massachusetts. And can't wait. Very proud. Mala, you're amazing.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. I hope I can live up to what you think of me.
You already do. You're just getting an extra degree.
All right. So, all that said, actually, I did mention Raleigh Day of Data. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit more here because it is live. Last time we talked on Shop Talk, we mentioned it's going live. It's going to happen. It was going to be a thing. Now it is a thing. It is real. It is actually happening. It is, I'm going to say spectacular, but let's not put expectations that high. It is above average. It is above average. Don't ask what average is. What we're comparing to is the average. So, Raleigh Day of Data. This is the new name for SQL Saturday Raleigh. So this is following from the naming change that Steve Jones made about a month or two ago. And it is going to happen on Saturday, May 23rd of 2026. This is in person, so there's not going to be any sort of recording, any sort of virtual experience. You have to be there or be square. And if you want to figure out where it is, this is Duke Health. So it is right here in the green box. You have all this stuff around. It's that pinpoint right there. You might say, well, where is that? It's right here. If you look at the map, it's right there. No, but seriously, this is in Durham. It is so if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area, it's going to be in Durham. It's going to be on that side of town. But we were there last year. Raleigh might work if I can talk the wife into coming. Raleigh is a beautiful area.
Yes.
Like a month earlier than when we're doing this. It's getting to be, by late May, it's starting to get warm. However, depending on where you're traveling, there's a lot to do in the area. Plus, go about 3 hours east and you get to some the Atlantic Ocean, and so it might factor in on a potential vacation plan or just be here. It's a nice area. So, if you want to be a speaker, our call for speakers is currently open. It will be open until March the 3rd, which means I'll drop a link to Day of Data, Raleigh Day of Data, and as soon as that link goes in, I will say OBS Studio is fighting me today, so link chat is slow. It's slow. and it's not your fault, chat. It's not your fault. You were born that way. But there we go. The link is in. That is Raleigh Day of Data 2026. If you want to be a speaker, we have Sessionize. We have our Sessionize open. And we are currently accepting session ideas. So let me drop a link there for that Sessionize. I would recommend submitting somewhere between 3 and 4 sessions if you are really interested in speaking. If you have,
Are you serious?
yeah, not that we would select 3 or 4, but my general recommendation is submit 3 or 4, and that gives us the most flexibility to say, oh, okay, here's the one that we want to get from you.
It's mostly because of overlapping topics that Kevin's saying that.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
like if you have an introduction to Python and 8 other people have introductions to Python,
Right.
and your only session you submitted was an intro to Python,
Right.
it's much less likely that we select you versus if you have an intro to Python plus an intro to DuckDB plus an advanced session on regular expressions. Then we could say, oh, well, we've got the intro to Python from somebody else. The DuckDB, maybe that we could figure out which of the 2 sessions that are more interesting for our audience or that may fit well with the rest of the sessions. So it just buys a little bit of extra flexibility, and it makes it more likely that we're able to select you.
What about what compatibility level are we talking about? Because of regular expressions.
Well, I mean, that was just a hypothetical. I'm throwing out
Okay.
hypotheticals here.
Okay, well, I'm gonna get technical on you for once.
But probably it would be the specific regular expression implementation in SQL Server 2025's database engine.
Exactly.
But SQL Server Management Studio has had basic regular expression support, and I don't know that you could get a full talk out of that. But the find and replace is actually regex friendly.
Yeah, it is.
Yes,
It is. Yeah.
But it's
It
a
is.
different set of.
I actually really like their find and replace.
Yeah. But the old Management Studio prior to the newer, like the VS 2022 shell, had a different set of regular expressions that it supported versus the newer VS 2022.
No, that's good to know, Kevin. I had no idea of that. Yeah.
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 And of course, VS Code has slightly different regular expression support itself. So you have like all these different implementations of the same general concept, but it has to do with do you allow for backtracking? Do you allow for forward capture groups and backwards capture groups? What types of complex implementation mechanisms do you allow for? And not all SQL Server related tools have exactly the same set of implementation details. So
this is what I get when I bring up a nuance that I thought I mastered and I was wrong.
I wouldn't say you're wrong. I mean, it is absolutely valid to say, hey, there are differences in here. And yeah, it's even within SQL Server. And then when you start talking about other tools, other products, other bits of functionality, if you're looking at regular expressions in Unix, of course, that all also depend on, which tool, which thing you're talking about, because grep will have different regular expression implementations than, I'm going to pick something
Perl.
else like Emacs, or Perl. Yeah, Perl.
I mean,
probably.
I'm sorry, curl.
Curl.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, curl the tool, yes, versus Perl the language. But yeah, regular expressions are wild. So an advanced session on regular expressions might go pretty well for like the 4 people who can understand them.
Solomon can. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, regular expressions are more of, it's like Perl code. It's write only. You never want to read them again.
Yeah, Perl is all like exclamation points and like a lot of characters, right?
Perl is a wild language where there are at least 3 or 4 different ways of writing Perl, and one way is like a regular programming language. It is actually readable, and then you get to, well, you could change that and save 18 characters by using this archaic combination. And
equal plus.
right, exactly. That's sort of a
then
wild.
bang. Yeah.
Yep. Where hey, I'm gonna be a wild man. I'm just gonna make this work. And then you come back 6 months later and say, what kind of idiot wrote this thing? Happens to all of us.
Oops.
But I don't know if maybe we could swing that into a SQL Saturday talk or a Raleigh Day of Data talk. Although I don't think I've ever seen Perl discussed at a SQL Saturday or any other.
Would be interesting.
I got my ideas already. F#.
I've done that.
I know you have.
That's at SQL Saturdays even.
You pick the stuff, so I was like trying to think about.
Hey, Mike, talk about tidyverse. Oh, you didn't do R, okay.
Oh, for R, yeah. I've been doing I've been doing R for a lot of.
Well, just show them how R can be better than Python in some ways. That would be a good talk.
Ooh, I'm writing it down.
I'm just kidding.
No. That's a good topic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Because see, the ODBC library for R is excellent. It's excellent. Like, I'm just impressed by it. Like, because that is one of the things that I use with a lot of my clients.
Yeah. So now that we've given Mike an idea, get your sessions in. It looks like we do have some submitted sessions, but not a lot. So this is a good opportunity to get some submissions. We still have almost 2 months. There's plenty of time, but get those in. Now, who doesn't have a lot of time? Notice that transition. Day of Data Richmond, which, by the way, is totally different from Raleigh Day of Data. Wow, they've got a giant logo.
They're legends. They have some awesome people.
Yes.
Well, I think Wayne Sheffield is retired, right?
Yeah, Wayne has retired. He's not doing so much anymore. This is Jamie Wick mostly.
Yeah, I know Jamie too. Yeah.
And AZ is doing some stuff. I don't want to give anybody short shrift up in Richmond. There are several people up there doing some great work. Jamie's the one who's been bothering me in a good way to say, hey, Day of Data Richmond is coming up. That one's on April 11th. So it's a good month before our event. And they have a whole bunch of different stuff here. Similar story to what we've got in Raleigh, but it will be at Reynolds Community College, which is where they were at last year. So there's that was a pretty decent place. It's a pretty decent place for them. And their call for speakers is still open. It ends in just under a week. So you have this week to get your sessions in place. If you want to speak at Day of Data Richmond, see, I have to remember the order of the words because in Raleigh, we had an executive decision, by which I mean I actually made a decision for once, and said, I don't like Day of Data Raleigh. I think the name doesn't sound as good as Raleigh Day of Data. So
he is the boss, audience.
Sometimes, yes. But Richmond is using the standard Day of Data Richmond. And so we've got Jamie, we've got AZ, and a couple of other folks, Russell and Rob. So again, see, I wouldn't have even mentioned Rob or Russell. Thankfully, their information is available on this page if you're interested in it. So go check that out. That is coming up in about 3 months. So it should be pretty neat.
So
usually good event.
If it's worth the Amtrak to Richmond is worth taking over any other forms of transportation. And especially in spring, it's not that slow or anything. It's nice. It's a nice ride.
Yeah, we could carpool Mala too.
I can't go.
Or you can't go, yeah, because you got your school.
Yeah.
So this is a sidebar. So SQL Data Partners, the SQL Trail. Where is he from?
Richmond. So that's
Richmond. He's
Carlos
from
El
Richmond.
Chacon.
Carlos, yeah.
So he's going to be there, right?
Of course.
Carlos has been there in the past, and yeah,
No, I'm pretty sure he'll be there. It's a big event for them. Usually he is.
yeah.
Yeah. You've not met
Okay.
him, Mike?
No, I just want to I want to tell him some funny stuff about Kevin and all of his other co-hosts.
Okay.
That seems reasonable.
Maybe next year we can carpool. I should be open to attending more events then compared to now.
I'm gonna get a Kevin car, like a Honda or the Ioniq, so I can go further than 20 miles.
Well, the car you dropped me here was after our team lunch was pretty nice and clean.
That was probably my wife's. Oh yeah, that was my car, but I had
Way cleaner than my car.
Yeah.
All right. So, that's about what I've got for days of data, but there are several others. Actually, you know what? While I've got the page open, OBS Studio has been fighting me today, so it's a struggle at the moment trying to get pages to load and do what I need it to do. But you can see Atlanta AI and BI is coming up on March 21st, so that's about 2 months from now. Then we've got Richmond, and Houston has an event on April 25th. Jacksonville is May 2nd. Raleigh is May 23rd. Baton Rouge, July 18th. So we've got a lot of them in that southeastern region. And over on the Data Saturday side, Chicago is March 14th. And then Croatia, which I guess is a little bit of a distance. I don't recommend driving. But
unless you're like James Bond, you have that underwater car.
Yeah. Or if you've got a hydrofoil, something that can go over the water like that. Gonna need a lot of gasoline for that. But I think if you go, let's see, was it? I forget if west to east or east to west was faster. I think east to west is actually faster in the Atlantic Ocean. That traveling from European continent to the Americas is faster than the other way around because of currents.
Yes.
So
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I believe you.
Yeah, in the age of sail, it was something like a 6-week difference. So if you were going strictly by sail, like say 17th into 18th century travel, it was like it was over a month difference heading one direction. It was like 3 months versus 2 months, somewhere around there.
Yeah, if you went west, you're in trouble.
Well, I can't remember. I cannot remember, but I suppose.
Well, I'm being very angle specific because of the United States. So I know the current goes from Florida all the way up to Nova Scotia, easterly, and when you go out to one time we went out to the current, and you can see whales and tuna fish. Like, it's crazy when you go out and see the actual current.
Yeah, I totally believe it.
So that's very eastern bias, but like east to west current one.
So I'm currently checking. Obviously, very weather dependent. But yeah, prevailing winds made the journey from North America to Europe considerably faster. Okay,
yes.
So actually, that's the way. So if you're heading out toward Europe, it's going to be a lot faster.
Well, that's the whole thing about going to Boston to Iceland and Norway, because like it's not that far. Like, you think it's really far, but it's not, especially with the currents.
Yeah. So I guess my advice is, if you're going to drive your car across to Europe, you're probably going to need some more gasoline on the way back. So just keep that in mind. Have an extra tank or something. Okay, so that was the event stuff that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to stop sharing for a little bit because we now have, I'm going to call this book report time. So Mala has been digging into vector search in SQL Server 2025 and wanted to talk about it a little bit. I have not done much in the way of vector operations in SQL Server 2025. It's something that honestly I should spend more time on, but I've been kind of lazy. Work has been off for a couple of weeks, and I definitely took that time off. So, got to eventually get myself back into the swing of things. But fortunately, we have somebody here who has actually done something. So instead of me yammering, Mala, you can yammer.
Sure. So SQL 2025 has a new feature that's called the feature is called AI powered vector search. Okay, it doesn't have much to do with any AI or anything, and I'll come to that later. But marketing kind of a thing. So let's call it. Let's throw AI at everything, and that's kind of how the naming is. There are two courses before I get into saying more on what I learned. Two good courses are available out there. One offered by my good friend, ex SQL Skills guy, Joseph Sack. And I bought his course over the holidays when SQL Skills was offering considerable discount. And I would say it's been 100% worth it. And I recommend, I don't know what Paul is charging for it now, but you can go and look it up on their website. It's worth it. It's only about, the total course is about 3.5 hours. I'm almost done, but not fully done, almost done. But I found it worth it. The second course on the same topic is also offered by Eric Darling, another excellent teacher. Eric's course is a little bit more expensive, but if you prefer his style, then that might be something you want to go for. Either way, it's worth it. And for people like Kevin who already know the topic really well, I don't think you need any course for it. It's not all that hard or all that detailed to learn on your own. It only takes a day or two to get your head around what they have. So that said, basically, like it is with all beginner kind of features, here there are some things I found. The vector search is the SQL Server alternate to having a full-fledged standalone vector database, which is an expensive operation. Um, the purpose for it is to allow for semantic searches, that is to search by meaning, uh, as well as hybrid searches where you can combine a traditional SQL Server search with the operators that SQL Server has and semantic search together in the same query, which is called a hybrid query. They have introduced a new data type, which is called a vector data type, to store embeddings. Embeddings, for those who are not familiar, is a numeric representation of text or images. Images are not supported. This is just text numeric representations here. In addition to this data type, they offer two functions. One is called the vector distance function, which is an exact distance computation between the embeddings. And the second one is called the vector search function, which uses what is called the nearest neighbor algorithm in machine learning to search for, to get an approximate match for whatever you are searching for. And for the second kind of function, there is an index available, which is called a disk ANN index. And if you have a really fast drive, it works without the fast drive too, but for it to work optimally and really well, it's better that you have an SSD, an NVMe storage with low RAM use and high recall, which is about 0.95. And then they also have an option to generate the embeddings, that is those numbers within SQL Server. It's an interesting option, but I'm not sure how that's going to work. My personal opinion after playing with it is that if you have a way to generate these numbers, the embedding numbers outside of SQL, then you're probably likely to make better use of this feature as opposed to the in-DB embeddings that they're offering. The reason for that is typically it creates a dependency on an outside third-party API, and if something goes wrong with that, then your process is going to hang or have all kinds of lags, and Typically, data people don't like that kind of marriage between a SQL Server and something else outside that you have to troubleshoot and mess with like that. It might be pretty hard. So, but if you have embeddings that you've already created or you can create outside SQL Server and use with the database, that would be most ideal. The pros that I saw with this is that it's really good semantic and hybrid searches for especially for small to medium databases. And if you have the index that if you can create the index even with an ordinary disk, it's reasonably fast, it works pretty well. The whole process itself, although it has a lot of words that people who are not familiar with machine learning may struggle with, I know even I would have struggled with before I took up my masters and understood some of it. It's not that hard to understand if you pay a little bit of attention and just google some of those terms. They are easy to understand and easy to use. And if you can generate the embeddings outside the database process, it's the querying process, then you may be better off. Although if you have a really active table with that changes where the descriptions change frequently and you have to update the embeddings often, that can be a bit of a problem. That it's really hard to get it to be up to date with the embeddings in the process that they have. And the biggest another big thing is that the index that they have here is read only, which means you have to drop it every single time you have to update the table, which is a huge pain. But it's still a preview feature, and there are chances that that might change later on. And then the other thing is that this is just an NLM model, that's natural language models that are hosted by companies that do AI. There is nothing AI about it. So that thing is pretty misleading, marketing kind of term. So people who are anti AI, or no, you can get scared into thinking this is not for us or anything. But this is actually just machine learning. It's not anything to do with AI or anything like that. It takes a lot of resources. Embeddings are not they are high volume to store, and your database is going to bloat pretty quickly with that. They don't have any special DMVs or anything for monitoring how these functions work or anything like that. It's just the regular SQL Server metrics that you have. So monitoring may be pretty hard to do initially, at least. And if your data that you're using for embeddings is sensitive, then it's going to be exposed to the third party vendor where you generate the embeddings with. And it supports a variety of models. There is a big list on the Microsoft help website, so you can go and look at all the models that you can use with it. You can pick what you like. So it looks like an interesting experiment. That's how I would summarize it so far. Whether or not it's going to evolve and become better and get to be really usable, we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, jumping on a couple of the points that Mala made, I'll go kind of reverse order. But regarding vector size, Mala mentioned, hey, these things can get big. Just to give you a numeric explanation of what's going on, think of it this way. If you're using text embedding 3 large, which is admittedly a bit larger than most people will use, but this is by default 3072 dimensions, where each dimension, if you suppose that is a 4-byte representation, then you're talking about 12K per string that you're embedding. And if I remember right, these are floats, so that's actually I think it could be up to 8 bytes per dimension. So you're talking 24 kilobytes if you don't compress this at all. And I'm not 100% sure of whether the indexes do any sort of compression of vectors, but you can see how that can grow quickly, where if I have a string that's 300 bytes and I store it in the database, and then I have an embedding that's 24 kilobytes, that's going to be pretty beefy. Now, also, in many cases, we want to break up those strings into chunks and then embed those chunks. So instead, you may have 2 kilobytes of data and then like 3 or 4 separate embeddings that are each 24 kilobytes. So yes, there will be definitely a lot of disk utilization with this. The fact that you cannot modify a vector index that's in place really sucks. It reminds me of column store indexes in SQL Server 2012 when they were just getting started and you only had non-clustered column store indexes and they were read-only. You couldn't update them. You couldn't insert or update data or delete data in tables that had column store indexes. And, I'd say if I know that SQL Server 2027, 2028, 2029, whenever the next version is, if I know that that version is going to have updatable vector indexes and that there will be improvements, that the algorithm for generating those vectors will be faster, that they'll have performance improvements, compression improvements, whatever, then I'd say, okay, that's probably worth the risk. The problem that I have is so many features will have a first version that is promising but not good enough. People don't adopt it, and then Microsoft says, "Oh, well, people didn't adopt it, so we're just going to get rid of it." And I hate that because they'll put out a minimum viable product that's not actually viable. So I guess I could have only put the scare quotes minimum viable product in case you're into scare quote efficiency, but it's not actually viable. It's not actually good enough. It doesn't work for most people. And then when most people say, well, I need these other things in addition to it, they say, well, not enough people used it to make it worth the investment. And this is the frustration that I see a lot of out of SQL Server over the past 15 years, really, is just a desire to have a thing that it either immediately takes off and then we'll continue investing in it, or it doesn't take off and forget about it. We're just going to ride the next wave. We're going to go put a blockchain in a database. And so it's really frustrating because you can see where these things could be useful. I mean, embeddings in a database make a lot of sense. The embedding mechanisms are different from what we're used to with regular data storage and data analysis. The sizes obviously are going to be quite different. The mechanisms by which we operate on this data will be different, but it doesn't necessarily matter that much. It's still, this is an area for databases to do their database things. Vector databases are out there. They do exist. They do operate in some ways, but a lot of the vector databases are painful. They're early in terms of maturity level. They don't have good backup stories, good high availability disaster recovery stories. They don't have ease of use, ease of implementation, administration. They don't really have the concepts that we're used to with a mature data platform product. Postgres is a little bit different in this regard because it is another example of a mature data platform product that has many of these things. Although, the more I learn about Postgres, especially looking at it from the side of an administrator, the more I say, SQL Server has done a great job of all of this. Nonetheless, those are platforms where you do have many of these ideas in mind. And then you go and you look at other popular platforms like Weaviate or Chroma, and you say, where are all of these features? Where is all of this functionality? Like if I'm troubleshooting an issue, what exactly can I do other than drop and rebuild an index, or drop and rebuild basically the equivalent of a table? And it's not nearly as nice of a story.
So Kevin, you just said something about Postgres that was like maybe 2 shop talks worth. Like the more you learn about it, what?
The more I learn about how people administer Postgres, and mind you, I am not a Postgres administrator. So My learning about it is checking what other people write and trying out a few things on my own. But the more I say, I'm glad the SQL Server people did what they did.
Right.
For things like backup and recovery especially. High availability, disaster recovery, backup, restore. These sorts of bits of functionality that I consider like normal. Here's how you take a backup. A backup is fully consistent. It's fully complete. You can take that and you can restore that somewhere else. In Postgres, there's like 6 different ways to back up depending on what you want to do. And some of those mechanisms don't have all of the information that you need. Backup could be everything from basically exports, CSV exports of all of your tables, to including additional metadata, including additional information that's going to be necessary to restore on that other side. And so you have to know more about how all of this works and how you implement it to get where the SQL Server has been for so long in terms of take backup, get .bak file, take transaction log backups, get .trn files, or whatever you want to call them, and restore to whatever point in time that you want. Now, SQL Server is certainly not perfect in this regard. There are bits of functionality that I wish existed that should have been there 20 years ago, especially around things like table level restorations. I think file group level restorations are a fraction of what they could have been. Although honestly, I don't know that we're ever going to get any of that stuff, which kind of brings me back to my original point of I hate the way that they allocate money for SQL Server at this point.
And it's almost become like a kind of a style, like what Kevin said. Thankfully, column store evolved, but they tried something like this with graph data some time ago, the exact same pattern. Indexes were read only. There were some, random features thrown in, which looked interesting on the face of it, but could evolve a lot better. And if they don't think it's a good fit in SQL Server, why mess with it even to begin with? And it's just left there. It's used. I don't think anybody is using that graph database feature now because it's not usable. It's not worth anything. There is no visualization. There is no Power BI, anything that you can throw even for a simple org chart kind of. It's what I was talking to Louis Davidson when we were at PASS last year. He went and wrote a book on that whole feature and put in a lot of things that could use more help and need to evolve a certain way. Nothing happened. It was just abandoned, and hopefully this doesn't go the same way, but it's the same pattern, the same way they come up with things, and I don't know, but it's promising on the face of it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so if they stick with it, and my hope, I don't know, I'm not sure. But I'll say predicated on a desire to see this succeed. Let's go there. Because I'm not 100% sure I want to see it succeed, but let's say that I am. I'm going to avoid that doubt, predicated on the idea that I want this thing to succeed. The area where I can see optimism is in the fact that vector is more like column store versus graph in terms of this is a mechanism for storage of data versus a language for operating on data. And so there's not a lot of language functionality. Most of it is more of how do you construct, store, operate on, and retrieve and manage. And so I think to that end, it is going to be more like column store, where assuming that they don't just abandon it after one release, you should see the story solidify. And maybe by the next release of SQL Server, it'll be at a point where you could use it for more than demonstration or for like a static data warehouse. And
it's for machine learning, right?
Yeah, it's for most of the use cases are going to be around generative AI. So yeah,
you would think that when we had some of these conversations with some of the Microsoft people where they're like measuring like the cubic feet of building data centers, like that they would be supportive of this.
Well, this is more for SQL Server, the box product, versus Azure SQL Database.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, Azure SQL Database does have the same capability. It's
Right.
where we saw this originate. But yeah, in either case, I think that there's a lot of growth that still has to happen before it becomes a full-on usable vector database. Until then, I don't know how it competes with a Chroma, with a Weaviate, with uh, some of these other vector databases, even if those products do not have a complete story to tell, even if they are not mature enough that I would want them heavily featured in an enterprise environment.
How do you
What
spell
However,
alleviate?
what I like, my favorite thing about it, what I like the best is what they call the hybrid query, which you cannot get from a dedicated vector database. So you get the breadth that you get from a semantic query and the narrowing down that you can do with a traditional SQL query and combine the two for good results. And I like that really a lot. I see a lot of potential with that in various businesses. And but like Kevin said, it all depends on how the feature evolves.
Awesome.
yeah, exactly. And to that end, I think that yes, that sort of hybrid query is very valuable. It's similar to the story that we heard about full text search way back in the day,
Yeah.
and I think there are some benefits to that. Where look, full text search was never going to be a proper competitor for um, Solar or Elasticsearch. Granting that full text search was out before the two, so it wasn't necessarily that it was intending to compete with them. It existed prior to Solar, but it's not going to be a competitor in that regard for proper text search. However, when you include proper text search plus querying of data in a relational form, well, full text search unfortunately still isn't going to be a competitor, but hypothetical full text search could be a competitor. It's just I haven't seen a real update to full text search in how many years?
Oh, it's been a long, long time. A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you might say this vector functionality may be pushing toward a newer version of that sort of search because you do have semantic search capabilities in SQL Server, and that's helpful. But until they have a good way of making it perform better, the first question that I think is going to be on a lot of database administrators' minds is how can I make this not knock down my server? How do I support an active implementation uh, where I've got other people with their own needs, with their own queries, and how do I keep this thing from just soaking up all of the resources because you're scanning 20 million sets of vectors?
Yep. So the index is pretty good if you have the right, especially if you have the right kind of storage, which a lot of companies do. If you have large databases, so I have hopes for that index, and I think because it's still preview, by the time it's released, it's not going to be read only or any such thing. The index does not do scans. It's pretty efficient and such. But without that, yeah, it can be a problem. The second problem is major problem is keeping the data in sync. That especially if your data is changing often, that can be a bit of a problem because it is an overhead to generate those embeddings.
Yeah, yeah. Regardless of whether you're generating them outside of your SQL Server or inside. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have a GPU, generating embeddings is not fast.
No.
So, and I'll say it's very uncommon for a SQL Server instance to have a proper GPU that can make use of CUDA. That's not something that we tend to think about with a SQL Server.
No, I'm glad you mentioned it because that's why I wrote it down because I'm like I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so now you're generating those embeddings probably on a different service, and then you're writing them into SQL Server. But you can't do that with that index in place. So I guess it would be drop the index and then make the updates and then recreate the index, which My recollection is creating the index takes a long time. But you may know more about that than me, Mala.
Creating the index depending on the size of how many embeddings you have and such, yeah, it does take time.
Yeah.
It does take time. I don't have a way to measure how much. I only have the test data that's part of the course, but I don't have any actual data. I have tried it with, for the simple reason we don't have. There is some conversation going on at work around getting embeddings on product data and such, but we don't have it yet, and we're hoping to have it. So I can't speak for how long it actually takes. No practical experience there, but I'm
Right.
going with the theory that yes, it is going to take long, without a doubt. And to drop it every single time your data changes and recreate it, oh boy, that's not going to be practical.
Yeah, that's downtime windows, and that may be significant downtime windows. So not a great answer. We'll see. We'll see what changes happen. We'll see when it gets out of preview, what that entails. When does it get out of preview? All that stuff. We'll find out later on, I guess.
Mm.
So now on to our next topic. So I'm going to share my screen again because I have another article. All right, this one comes from Mark Zaman, who I love his articles because they tend to be very thoughtful architecture posts, and there's a whole lot of functional programming involved. So he's kind of got both of those. This post, though, is not about functional programming at all. It is actually about using source control. Specifically, the example is Git, because let's be honest, that's the only source control product that people use anymore. RIP to Mercurial. The rest of them, SVN, CVS, and the like, Team Foundation, version control, cool stories, all, but we're not talking about those anymore. So basically, the article talks about two different patterns for using source control, why you might want to use it, and this is some of the challenge around how do you help people understand Git. Git is a very complex product. For something that's supposed to be very simple, it is remarkably complex. And part of the reason for its complexity is that there are two wildly different patterns for using Git. And so recommendations that people have on behaviors of what you should do, merging versus squashing, the way you commit, do you rebase, etc., those sorts of things do not play along nicely with both patterns. One pattern expects a certain type of implementation. The other pattern expects something totally different. And so as a result, it can be difficult to meet both of those needs. So Mark lays it out as collaboration or CI versus tactical Git, where collaboration means, hey, I can share my code with other people. I can implement it continuously, meaning that as I check in code, it can build, it can run tests, we can make sure that it's working appropriately. And it's a great way of being able to tie together multiple people's code to make sure that your changes don't break mine, and vice versa. So Mark mentions here, once history is shared with others, it should be should be considered immutable. And so when you push, other people can pull your changes, but you should not be able to change the history afterwards. So he does say, okay, well, what happens if you share something that contains an error? Fix the error, push the update. Sometimes you can use git revert. This is what I was about to bring up, so I'm glad Mark mentioned it in the next paragraph. Leaking sensitive data. If you accidentally leak client secrets, passwords, other information that should not be in your repository, the problem is, most people don't realize this, Git preserves your history. Meaning, if I had passwords.txt checked into my repository and then realized and said, oops, let me delete that from the repo, it is still there. I may look at GitHub or GitLab or whatever Git repository host I'm using and see, oh, passwords.txt is gone. but somebody can go through the history and search for passwords and might find passwords.txt, and it's still there in history. They can pull that down. They can see those passwords. That information is still exposed. So this is actually, I think, an area where Git has a solution, but it's a weird, difficult to implement solution that not a lot of people are going to know off the top of their head. It's not an easy fix. And I suppose the response to that is, well, you shouldn't be doing it very often. And I tend to agree. This is not something that I do want to do very often, but I also want to make sure that when it's crunch time, when we messed up, we need to fix this, that we're actually going to be able to fix it the right way, versus, well, I think it's good enough. I did as much as I could, but I don't understand some of these commands. And because I don't understand it, I'm afraid to run it because I don't want to break our source control repository because our developers are relying on this. So it's a challenge. And so, yeah, if you accidentally share a password, revert does not rectify because data is still in history. You have to rewrite history, and you have to communicate to other collaborators. And basically, Mark doesn't even know what's the best way to do it. Like I've done this before for small group. It's not fun. There's a lot of work involved in getting this, like excising that file altogether. So not fun, not easy, just a pain. Another consequence here is pull requests. In GitHub, pull requests are a two-step process. So first I push my branch, and then I create a pull request off of it. And so Mark here mentions, all right, well, sometimes I'll review my pull request before pushing the button, and occasionally I spot an error. At this point, I consider the branch unshared, so I can rewrite the history and force push it. But once you've clicked the button and sent the pull request, you don't want to rewrite history. Even if you find an error, that's fine. Push the change and let it live. So you can use git add, git commit, git pull, git push, git reset sometimes. And those are the main things. So you don't use rebase, you don't use squash, you don't use a lot of the advanced features. This is probably where I think a lot of developers, a lot of data platform people live. And I think for the most part, that's fine. It's where a lot of the tools like SourceTree or GitHub Desktop really promote you being in. It's the easier approach. But Mark mentions, hey, there is, however, another use case, which Git wasn't actually committed for or intended for it, but you can use local management of code files, meaning if you have your code, let's say that I'm going to try out some code, I'm going to try out an idea. I can create my own local branch. I don't need to push it to the remote repository, and I can just have it there. I can make whatever changes I want. If I like those changes, I can create a branch remotely and then push those changes. If I just want to have a version of things for my own, I can keep those locally. And the example that he lists in here is, let's suppose that you're a senior developer and the junior developer saying, hey, I'd like to change our code base so that we do this thing instead. And you say, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. Usually when people say, we tried that before and it didn't work, I come at it and say, yes, but I didn't try it. I don't know that you tried it the best way. Maybe a little bit of that is arrogance, but quite a few times this has worked out. Or you tried it 4 versions ago when things weren't supported quite the same way, and now there's new functionality, there are new capabilities. Let's give it another try. So Mark's example here is, especially in cases where you know it's not going to work, instead of just trying to convince the junior dev it's not going to work or telling them it won't work, don't do it, you can show them, hey, here's my repository, here's my branch. You could push that branch up like, hey, go look at the code, go check it out, see what I did and why it didn't work. And in that kind of a scenario, now you've saved a lot of time. Or the junior dev might come back and say, yeah, but what if we did this instead? So it's possible that you might actually find a workaround. You might find a replacement or a better idea because you've kept that old code. You also don't need to have a bunch of code commented out because you have a copy of it. You have a branch of it elsewhere. So I know people who love commenting out huge swaths of code, and I personally don't like that. I don't want commented out code. Some I will accept. Specifically, if you have reasons to change that code, like you're changing it back and forth for whatever reason, or if it's highly volatile code, or if you're in the middle of making changes. Okay, comment away. Once you're done, once that code is solid, old comments aren't doing anything. Old commented out code, it's not helping. If anything, it's hurting, because if I search for something and I find it in commented out code, I have to remember, oh yeah, that's commented out. I may miss that hash mark or the double slashes, or that it's in a multi-line comment block and I don't see the slash star star slash because I'm using grep, and I don't have all of the context of that. It's like, oh, we've got this in the code here, and then you find out later on, well, that was actually commented out. So I don't like commented out code very much, and being able to store your code in the source code repository and know I have a version of this that contains that old information, I think is really helpful. So Mala here mentions Git is one of those things I freely admit I intentionally want to know just what I need to get by. And I think it's fair. I think, honestly, I don't like Git very much. I have to use it. We all have to use it. There's really not a good alternative. I think Mercurial was a better design, but it's effectively dead. I mean, there are some companies that still use it, but let's be honest, that's very rare. Git is, I'm going to estimate 90+% of the source control market, and like almost 100% of the source control over the last 10 years market. So probably not going to help very much. And Carlos here mentions, yeah, you rotate your secrets, change passwords, revoke API keys. I mean, yes, that's part of the story, yes, but you also want to excise that from your files, because you also don't want this thing to show up in automated search scans. You might have like an automated operation that is looking through your code base and will say, oh, well, you have 45 secrets in your code. Not really. No, we got rid of those. We revoked those secrets. But now your code scan is showing something that's not true anymore. So it adds noise. It adds complexity to getting appropriate information. And so for that reason, I think what Carlos mentions is necessary but not sufficient. And there are some times that you cannot do it. Yeah. So like, if I don't control the password, if I don't control the API key, if I can't get it changed, if it's something where that password for whatever reason is unchangeable, we have a system where we can't really change the password, that's pretty bad. But it can happen where it would be very difficult to change a password. But even then, you definitely want to be able to excise that history. You want to be able to prevent other people, especially if it's a public-facing repository or where you have a high likelihood of a bad guy being able to see that information. And it's a challenge. And the tool set for tactical Git, yes, you do a lot of rebasing, stashing, branching. I do a lot of stashing. I do a fair amount of branching. Cherry picking, I'm not good at. It is a pain that I experience around moving information between commits, moving information between branches. Stash, I think, works really well. I love Stash, and I guess that's about where I'm at on that. So stop sharing here because we are right around the top of the hour. As a quick reminder, next Tuesday, we are going to have our in-person meeting. So that'll be at Tech Systems next Tuesday. It's going to be Jeff Iannucci, who will talk to us about defending your SQL Server against ransomware. So Jeff will be coming at us remotely because he is out of Phoenix. So not gonna come in person, but hopefully we'll get a lot of people to come here in person. Check new beginning of the year. Weather hopefully will cooperate. Won't have any snow or anything, so fingers will be crossed for that. And our artificial intelligence, business intelligence, data science, etc. meeting on the fourth Tuesday. That's going to be on January 27th. So 2 weeks from tomorrow will be a getting from zero to Fabric Heroes. This is building an analytics solution in 60 minutes. Should be kind of fun getting started with Azure in about with Microsoft Fabric in about 1 hour. So we'll see how far we can get with that. But until then, we're at the top of the hour. Thanks for coming in, everybody. Hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Mike and Bala. And until we do see each other at a future episode of Shop Talk or wherever, take care.